All right, Amelia, you are the host, and I've taken off your waiting room, so you shouldn't have to admit people, but you should be able to share screens.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I love this slick little platform. It's super cool. Hey, Melina.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I just got back from Kosovo, so I'm still on, I don't know what time zone.
Got it.
Like what day is it? I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh. How was your travel? Was it okay?
It was good. We did fly back through JFK, so that was not great with the snow, but that was the only really big hiccup. But other than that, it was good. It was a accreditation visit, so it was for Chia, so it was really interesting to see the other side. So I was a reviewer on the other side, so
That's so cool.
it
That's
was really
awesome.
cool.
Well, that explains why you weren't at AACTE then.
I was there for the pre-con, so I was there like the first couple of days, and
Okay.
then I flew out Friday midday. So I went right from New Orleans to Kosovo. So yeah,
Wow.
I was there.
Okay.
I was there, sort of, but not there.
Well, why I didn't see you. I should
That's
have
right. That's right.
clarified. Yeah.
I actually
Okay.
got it on Fat Tuesday, which was never a good idea to go to New Orleans on Fat Tuesday. So yeah, it was a little crazy to get to the hotel from the airport. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, somehow there were a few of us who had three back-to-back conferences in New Orleans in January and February. So,
you spent a lot of
that
time
was,
there, huh?
yeah, that was, yeah. We're like, we should have just gotten a house. Like,
Yeah, right? For like a month, and then you would have been fine.
exactly. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for joining the accreditation session at the end of a day of a virtual conference. The, the few, the proud. We'll let people come in for a couple more minutes. I think we technically begin in about 2 or 3 minutes. Judy, how are you doing?
I am good. I was going to ask Melina if she got the snow and ice that we got in Middle Tennessee.
In Raleigh, it was kind of dicey. We never really get snow. We always get ice. So it's never pleasant, and kids are always upset, because they're looking for snow, but we just get ice every time. So but it was pretty good. I mean, we didn't have many delays, so it was okay. But yeah, we got that. We had like 2 weekends in a row where there was something going on with the
Yeah.
weather. So not pretty, but and
It
cold.
was
It was
really
cold.
ugly in Nashville, really ugly.
Yeah, and I had a lot of friends and people in Oxford, Mississippi that were just
Yeah.
hammered there. So they almost a week and a half without power there. So they were really struggling.
I'm glad you made it back through New York. Okay.
I did. It was I was a little worried, but we made it. So it's a long there's no direct way to go to Kosovo, so it was many stops. So it was Zurich and Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to JFK, and JFK had to go to Atlanta to get back to Raleigh. So it
Oh
was it
my
was
gosh.
it was
Oh,
like I'm flying over home. I'm like, oh, just drop me off, and then come back.
Yay. Well, welcome everyone. We're just waiting one more minute to start at our official start time. And, thanks for hanging out with the accreditation crowd at the end of the day
Cool
on a
kids.
Friday.
mhm. We are the hardy ones.
It's some dedication to sign on to this meeting, that's for sure, you guys. Especially those of us in Eastern time. I'm like, it's like 6 o'clock. I don't know what time it
Oh, I
is.
forgot about you, Amelia, over there. I forgot
It's
about
5 o'clock because my cocktail's waiting for me when the meeting's over.
that.
Preach.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Melina, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. And where are you? What state?
I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, okay. So your weather's about like ours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been rainy and foggy and kind of yucky today, so just
Oh.
not a great day.
Well, now we had sun in Tennessee today, so that was good. Yeah, it's been a beautiful
Hopefully
day.
this weekend we get some sun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my clock says 5 o'clock, so let's get started. We don't need to wait any longer to launch our end of week, end of virtual conference accreditation session. So, wow, thank you everyone for joining us. This is a robust group. Um, I don't have a presentation for you guys today. I was going to turn it over to Melina first, and if there were any updates you wanted to give us. And then I was just going to open it up to anyone and everyone for accreditation or assessment style uh, questions and resource sharing.
Sure. So a couple of updates. We're getting ready to have council in a few weeks in April. And I think we have 42 cases going through. The decisions from the previous accreditation council we've looked at, and so that was the fall council meeting, that was in October. And so I did the analysis. I was kind of look at where AFIs and STIPs kind of reside. And I'll say it's been on trend with the previous semesters. We didn't see any, places where there were sort of anomalies or oddities. We still see standard five, being in the most AFIs and STIPs, but again, not terrible. I will say that we've seen a couple of like interesting spikes, and they're not, I wouldn't say they're a trend yet because I don't have any other data except for the one data point for fall. But we're seeing a lot of institutions that have a lot of turnover in staff and faculty, and it's just something that's in the last year or two has been pretty common with people retiring or positions being eliminated and budgets and all that kind of stuff. And so that really does impact sort of institutional knowledge about what happened in the institution prior to that person retiring or leaving. And so we've seen some gaps with data for EPPs because of that sort of institutional knowledge not being there. So we hear a lot of, well, I didn't know that we were supposed to send that out, right? That person was responsible for it. And so now we've picked it back up, but there was a gap. And I also think that we're seeing a little bit of uptick in standard four for employers and completer satisfaction, AFIs there, for a few reasons. It's not, a huge uptick, but it is a little bit more than usual. And I think that's because based on what I could see in the cases, there was, just again, a very low response rate, or the capacity is just not there. So a few EPPs, they took their AFIs because they said, we did all that we could do. We were working on sort of some of our other bigger issues. And we just didn't have the capacity, our faculty didn't have the capacity to reach out to employers this particular cycle, or to reach out to completers, because we just didn't have capacity to do it. And so, I mean, they're owning that, right, in terms of their data, but that was unusual because we don't usually see that, level of honesty, I think, in reports about just the capacity of faculty. So I think, and that goes to staff too, but I think that's something to keep an eye on in terms of there are fewer people doing the same work. And so there is a capacity limit for folks. And so some things just have to be put aside, and we'll pick it up when we can, kind of um, uh, idea, right? And so that went in standard four. So we're seeing again a few more AFIs, and that one actually had a few stipulations too, which four doesn't generally. We don't usually see that, especially in 4.2 and 4.3. But we did see that this past go around. So again, we'll wait and see in the spring if that's a trend or something that we need to consider or think about. But right now, it's just a data point. And then we are seeing, I think, standard two begin to level out a little bit. So we saw, a lot of institutions struggling with having 50 different ways to be a teacher. They were just adding all these different ways to do clinical experience and trying to navigate what that would look like in terms of their data. So I think that's evening out. We're seeing institutions kind of pick their lanes and decide whether they're doing apprenticeships, whether they're doing traditional student teaching, whether they're doing residency models, or whatever it is. We're seeing that kind of we're not seeing the spikes and kind of like we're doing everything right, where they're trying to figure out what they can do capacity wise and by program, right? So some programs do certain types of clinical experience and others do another type. And so we are seeing that even out a little bit. So we didn't see as many AFIs and areas in standard two, which I thought was a positive. And in reading the reports, it really looks like institutions have kind of picked their lanes and are comfortable with moving forward with that process for clinical experience. So that's a good thing. And that's kind of overall the outlook from fall. I will say that, we've had almost a year of EPPs going through under the new federal guidelines and state requirements and kind of all of that. And I think our flexibility options have been helpful, and I think EPPs have utilized them. And we haven't had any issues with EPPs feeling like meeting the CAPE standards would somehow get them into trouble either at the federal level or the state level. There's enough flexibility in there that the EPPs have found ways to address the standards in flexible ways. And so again, we haven't seen an uptick in, any kind of severe findings for not doing certain things. And so I think that's a positive too. We've been pretty happy with the flexibility. We wanted to see where that would go with EPPs, and we think it's again a positive. A turn for most EPPs is to have that flexibility, and especially with disaggregation and acting on that disaggregation, and so what that will look like. So I'm hoping that the folks that went through in Tennessee that recently went through felt that flexibility or utilized it, or if they have any comments about their reviews. We're still working with teams sometimes. Sometimes we have to go back to a team and say, hey, these are questions that the EPP can't really answer, or it's a state rule or law or policy, or, and help them to navigate that too, because each state's a little bit different. So although I don't think we've had that in Tennessee, because there's always a Tennessee person on the team. So there's always somebody there. And then the state folks are there as well to say, hey, this is our policy. This is what we have to do. And so I think the EPPs have some cover there because there's at least two people on the team that understand and can explain to the rest of the team whatever the context is for what that EPP is doing. So overall, I think flexibility has worked, and we're going to keep doing that. We are looking at the revision of the revisions, right? Because every 7 years we have to look at the standards again, and that will be in 2029. So we are going to start that process a little early, maybe in 2027, and think about the rollout for that a little bit differently, depending on where we go, right? I don't think there'll be a huge number of changes in edits, but there may be some changes in wording and changes in some of the components. But again, we will have that, I think, done much earlier in the process so that we can have them out to the public, and then we can have not the same semester that did the revisions last time implement them, but a different semester. So we'll kind of shift that a little bit so it's not always the same EPPs that are having to navigate new or revised standards. So we're kind of trying to figure what that will look like. So it may be, 2030 where they go into effect, but they're at least out there for folks to use when they're writing their self-studies, because they do that so much earlier in the process. That's 9 months before their visit. So, giving them that opportunity to review those and have those out for their reviews in 2030 is probably where we're going to wind up being. But we'll start that process in late 26, 27, early 27. So we'll be calling for folks to serve on the task force and give us feedback. And of course, it will go out for public comment many times, any of the changes. So So that's something that's just upcoming that we're working on. And we're also doing the elementary ed standards. We're revising those as well, because those are also our CAPE standards, even though they're elementary. They still are considered our standards. So we will go through that. And they're, I think, 9 years out. So we're a little bit late on reviewing those, but we're starting that process this year. And hopefully this summer we'll have some drafts for people to look at. And they might not change a lot, but we have had a lot of feedback on grade bands and different ways to think about the standards that could be more conducive to utilization from the field. So we'll take those into account and see what we come up with. And that's everything from the Cape side.
Thank you so much for all of those updates. I will see if Ron and Bianca have any updates from the state, the Tennessee side of things. Sorry, I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but if there's any similar updates you have on the Tennessee Comprehensive Review process, we're happy to listen, and thanks for joining us.
Well, I'm sorry. Thank you, Amelia, for for calling us out.
We're putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, honestly, we don't have any updates at this time. Whenever we do have updates, we will always share those in the EPP update newsletter that comes out each month. But there's nothing new happening on our end right now. Of course, once Kate makes their changes, we'll definitely be looking at our documentation and seeing what we need to do to be sure that we're still in alignment.
Wonderful. And I think Alicia said this morning you just finished up another comprehensive reviewer training. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think Beth was helping the state with
Mhm.
the modules and getting everybody kind of dual approved, so state and Cape, if they were interested in the Cape part of it. But I think we had I don't know what the numbers were for the this particular cohort, but we will continue to support you all doing that as frequently as you need.
wonderful. Yeah, I will say to anyone who's new to this group, that's one of the best ways to learn, is to go through the reviewer training and then to be a reviewer. Really one of the best ways. I don't know that there's a better way to learn. We're teacher educators. We believe in experiential learning, right? Like you have to do an internship experience. It's kind of like doing your internship experience. Okay, wonderful. So let's see, we did have a state board meeting today that did tweak a couple of policies. We've already talked about the tweaks and assessment policies. There's also a tweak in the educator preparation policy that allows for a case-by-case basis, perhaps review of internship and job embedded clinical experience spanning across different academic years. So I'm guessing there will be more guidance coming about that, but I just wanted to put that on everyone's radar. That was a pretty big topic of conversation and in-person fall tacti. So wanted to make sure to call everyone's attention to the policy and to read the policy, and then we can send forth questions after we read the policy. But yeah, we also have EPP report card and annual reports that are both out now. So there was a few questions about that in our East Tennessee meeting. So if anyone has any questions about that, we could discuss at this point. I will say that's a big reason that we seem to meet Standard 4 in the state of Tennessee is that we have those two resources. So we're very happy that we have those resources. Even as we have questions on some of the metrics, we're very happy that the resources exist.
And speaking of annual reports, the Cape annual reports are open for everybody. I know if you're a Cape coordinator, you're like, oh yeah, the annual reports. We try and turn those around really quick. So if you can get them in and not wait until April, it's advantageous because we can turn those around quicker when we don't have as many in the queue. So we can give you your
Yeah.
feedback and get you off off the list as quick as possible, especially now and into March, because it's pretty quiet. We'll get 2 or 3, and Ben and Jessica and the staff are able to turn those around super quick. So, and then we'll stop bothering you about annual reports. So, the process should be much easier than it has been the last couple of years with the new system. Everything should be in place, and so it shouldn't be too onerous to do. So please get those done early. And then we do have our drop-ins, so anybody can drop into any of our drop-in sessions every week or two and get your questions answered. Sometimes we'll finalize your report in the meeting. We'll just pull you in a breakout. We can get you to do it and submit, and then we can move you forward. So we try and get those out the door as quick as possible.
I do have a question about that, Melina. I just did a review and we were looking for the previous annual reports from that EPP. Is there a place in Ames for those to be linked or shared?
Yeah, we're working on that. I don't think there's a way to do it now. And so the EPP generally puts them in and says, oh, here's our annual report, what we said. But we're working on those connections so that you'll be able to see those pieces as a reviewer. So if they're going to refer to them or utilize them, then we can, have those accessible. But right now it's not connected.
I have one thing. It used to be where if you were going through a review, if you were in that year, you did not have to do the annual report, but that has changed, right?
Yeah, everybody has to do an annual report, but if you're going through review, it's a modified report. It's less. And so you're still addressing whatever AFIs you had previously, because even though you've gone through review, if it opened and you haven't gone to council yet, we haven't been able to update whatever those decisions are from council. So, right now, like if you went through in the fall, you're not going to get your final decision until the spring council meets.
Right.
So you're just going to address whatever your previous things are. And a lot of that can be, we went through review. So it's just going to ask for your, completer numbers and some other information. It's going to be a much sort of modified annual report, but you still have to do one.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And then next year, you'll have your updated one with whatever your visit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So like Cindy would have hers, because I think you're going through right in the spring. So into council. So you would have the next annual report in 2027 would be on whatever your new findings are.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
And hopefully no findings, right, Cindy?
That's exactly right.
So how is everyone feeling about with elimination of EdTPA, looking forward to having enough data to present to CAPE on candidate effectiveness at completion?
We're actually kind of having fun with this. And it's because, we've completed our CAPE review. We feel like we're in a safe spot we're not stopping, collecting data, but we are pausing what we do with it. And we're kind of revamping, just what we feel like is important. And it's been it's a great space to be in right now, like to be able to just step back and look at what it is that we really want. And then how do we want to, collect it? How do we want to analyze it? So stay tuned. I mean, we're in the middle of it, which is a little messy right now. But I'm excited about it. I think it's going to have I feel for the first time, like I always felt like I was backpedaling and trying to join class halfway through. And now I feel like, okay, I've done this twice. I've done 2 reviews and we know what we need, and we can like actually craft how we want to do it and work smarter, not harder. So that's where we are.
I'll say for TSU, we're actually, I think it's similar to Cindy's comments. We're kind of excited. We actually, because we have the year-long cohort, particularly for our undergraduate candidates, we were actually doing EdTPA as well as teams anyway. So in the fall semester for our residency 1, we do like a deconstructed teams where we're focusing on the rubrics, but in particular skills, and then we do the full team evaluation for residency 2. So having Ed CPA off of the plate, they're mad because they're like, we still have to do it. We're like, we still have to do it. So it's their final exam for this semester, but we're excited because at the same time, we're using that data. This is kind of like our pilot group, the phase out group, but also the phase in for teams to really get back into what we know, I think, for a lot of our EPP faculty as familiar teaching, because it was really kind of hard to make those alignments between that and EdTPA. So it was really more about what does EdTPA need? And the mentor teachers, what we found in some of our dispositional data was it was very hard for them to support them because they're trying to mentor our candidates. The candidates are working on EdCPA, and the mentor teachers are like, hey, I need you to do what you need to do because once we get through with spring break, I need my class back. And so I don't know what this commentary stuff is. But again, we've used this particular year. Everyone seems to be happy because everyone in Nashville can speak teams. They understand it. The mentor teachers understand it, and they're saying, and we can all our master clinicians. Everyone's coming in like classroom management, this, and so all the pieces are lining up where we're seeing for our juniors that they feel ready. We actually did a workshop on teams for faculty and our students. We had a professional development potluck, minus the food, but we all got together and we learned and we deconstructed it together. So we're really excited to see how they are going to be leveraging and using it, knowing that we can bring back in our mentor teachers and really calibrate what they are seeing, what our master clinicians are seeing, and what our students understand will not only be their assessment for the EPP, but also the assessment that will guide them into how they do instructional and demonstrate instructional effectiveness in their profession. So buy it, TPA. Farewell. I'll send you some roses.
Thank you guys both for sharing. We're doing something very similar here, is just, having fun with it and getting to focus on what we think is important. And I think the big idea is just to make sure that we all know that we can't, when CAPE comes, we can't just say, oh no, we don't have candidate effectiveness at completion data because our state does not require EdTPA anymore. Like, we're still responsible for evidence that shows that, and data that shows that meets those standards. We can't just say, oh no, well, we don't do EdTPA anymore. The state doesn't require it. So that's the big point there, is to make sure that we are thinking about intentionally how we replace those components in our crosswalks and our matrices and our suite of data that we have available to us for program improvement. And we can't just say, oh, state doesn't require it. So, and honestly, that's true on I personally feel, and maybe this is because I have two kids in public school, but I feel like that's the case with our content preparation as well. We do have, the ability to license folks without praxis in certain, with majors in the content area and things like that. But really making sure that we have a measure of if they actually know the content or not remains important. Not all majors in a content area are created the same. I've seen folks with a 1.2 in a mathematics major, and I'm not sure I want them teaching my child BC calculus. So just throwing that out there. But it's even if the state doesn't require it, we're still held to standards of ensuring candidate preparation. So, um,
Amelia, I think that's a real good point. I think that's almost as equal concern as the replacement for EdTPA. Can you continue that conversation a little bit and talk, what are people doing to replace the praxis
Karen,
besides the grade point average?
yeah, and that's currently where we are, Karen. We require a minimum GPA in the major verified. Otherwise, they have to take the praxis for us, regardless of what the minimum is. I've had some conversations recently about sticking solely to the minimum that's in state board policy. You know, we appreciate those parameters, but I think it is incumbent upon us as EPPs to decide if we're comfortable with that minimum and if there is something else we need to put into place to make sure that we are sending candidates out there fully prepared. Amelia, I don't have any children of my own, but I have nieces and nephews from 35 to one on the way. And so, you know, that's a big concern to me as well. I don't want them having a math teacher whose math major GPA was a 1.2. Like, that's just not acceptable.
Yeah.
I
And
think,
we've talked about this in some other sessions too, just that changing landscape of, you know, we're not where we were a couple years ago of being super desperate for teachers. And I know all of us wanted to be responsive to our school partners during that time. And, you know, that is what it is. If someone in front of the children is better than no one in front of the children. Like, I get that. Someone has to at least watch them. But you know, we are, I had a school partner today say that they're back at the level of having about 30 applicants for every elementary ed opening. Like, it's, you know, I know the national narrative around shortage is strong, but we've, and we heard our TDOE colleagues say earlier this morning, you know, we're focusing in on quality. So I do think that it's worth understanding that, you know, we are in a little bit of a different place now than we were a few years ago, with teacher preparation and teacher shortage. And
We
I do, yeah, we're not held to state minimums. In fact, we're held to our programs as they're approved by Ron and Bianca and the rest of you know, the crew. So we can't, like, you know, it's not just about ensuring a candidate is above the state minimum. It's about fidelity to our programs and our quality assurance system that should be built around those programs as approved, by the department.
you know, that to me, this is one of the things that I feel like the revamping for us is coming into play because for so many years we were just worried about can they pass ed TPA? You know, we're going to prepare them, we're going to get them there, we're going to get them there. Now, but at the same time, the state was coming along with all these things in literacy, you know, and IPGs, and yes, we were using team, and now I feel like we can actually focus on team, the literacy, IPG, like, and craft of dispositions we're working on our own. Like, we know what we want our candidates to do, and we know what we want them to look like in the schools. And so we're trying to craft something where we will be evaluating and using it's centered around team, but involving more with faculty, like in earlier stages where we're watching our candidates, whether it be short videos or whatever, and then having a true progression. And we're not so much worried about that anymore. And but the things we learn from EdTPA are going to be incorporated into it. Like, there's still, you know, that work, that data analysis, and there's still the richness of the things that we've learned. So I feel like it's a great time. And I don't know, and hearing people talk, I would love it if, I don't know if we would want to have a group where we would share some of the work that we're all doing to try to come up with something. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I'm talking off the top of my head, but we work so well together. And when we do things together, I think it benefits everybody. But
was going to say we had our advisory school partner meeting last night, and they were so excited to know that we were focusing on team. In fact, one of the administrators said, why would you do anything else? That's what we use. That's what they're going to be using in the classroom. They were very excited about that. I did want to add, beware of using GPAs as a measure because it can be so subjective. As a reviewer, we really caution people not to do that.
It is a made up number, right? Like,
And
we
I
have
will
no
say,
idea how that's made up.
like Judy mentioned, when you see reviews, we see content GPA a lot, but it's one of multiple measures, right? So that can be one piece that you're looking at, but where else are you measuring that content knowledge? And it could be woven into rubrics. It could be, something as a portfolio at the end, but there's some other measures besides just saying, oh, they got C's in all their classes, so they're good. This is what we got. And so yes, don't rely on it as the only measure, but I know that it's embedded in a lot of your programs. So that's a check to make sure that they're, meeting the requirement at whatever other level, but make sure that there's some other, multiple measures that look at content. And we do have a lot of states that don't have Praxis. They don't use Praxis. So they're doing these other things. They're embedding those content measures in their rubrics and other places that they're getting, that data. So
I'll also say some of the people that struggle the most make the best teachers. And so, if you don't get math as quickly as that 4.0 math major, you're actually going to be able to teach that better to someone who's struggling. Yeah, there's that too.
That is well established in the professional literature as well. So that's, a very hard thing that when we say, no, you need a 27 ACT and a 4.0 GPA to become a teacher, we're going converse to the professional literature of who becomes good teachers.
Well, the
So
professors that we've all suffered through at the college level who love whatever it is that they love and they're expert at it, but that doesn't mean they can teach it. Whew.
yeah, uh what was it? Organometallic chemistry course I had to take twice where he literally erased with one hand while he was writing with the other hand. It was one of those. Like that was great.
Well, one of the things I'd like to go back to, and I think Melina, when she first started her points at some of the trends they're finding, is turnover rates among faculties, and that can be it can be a good thing because you're getting some talent, you're getting some fresh, but or you're either losing your good talent. It could be a bad thing. So, but the thing is, for data. Um, One of the things I have to do most is drive the fear out of data. Yes, it's going to tell us some good stories and it's going to tell us some bad stories. But that's all for continuous improvement, continuous growth. And the new folks that come along with it, just trying to get them to help to understand that. This is my third team as a dean and going through Cape, and this is one of the sharpest teams. I hope none of the other teams ever hear me say that, but it's one of the sharpest teams I've ever worked with because they pick that data up, they roll with it, they know it's there, they know we have to use it. I had a phone call today, and one of them asked me, listen, we've got a 75% on this particular new learning activity. What should I do? I said, post it, talk about it, and talk about how you're going to fix it. That's the best thing to do. Don't hide it, post it. So it's those kinds of things. And then it makes us change and move forward and continuously grow. Getting new faculty to walk in the door understanding that is a big plus. And that's one thing that I just always have to focus on, driving the fear out of data. I know that had nothing to do with your last point, but I just wanted to make that point. I'm sorry. So
no, and I think that's true of not only with the Cape process, but so Tennessee's about maybe a year or a year and a half behind where like New York and New Jersey were because they also got rid of their EdTPA requirement.
yeah.
And so they were all scrambling to kind of figure out they had to have some kind of portfolio. State said you have to do something. And so they were trying to figure that out. And we've had a few institutions go through and, they were in that realm that you all were talking about. We're just trying things and it's exciting and we're going to, see if it works. And there were a few that tried some things that didn't work. And they said, we thought this was going to be great. And our data really didn't show that it was. And it was, onerous to faculty or it was difficult to understand in the field. And so they went back and totally, revamped it again. But they used that data as part of their CAPE review. They said, this is what we did. This is what didn't work about it. This is what we didn't like. And then here's what we're doing to modify and move forward with it. And that was a cycle of data, even though it was not great, right? In terms of the outcome, it was fine to talk about that. It wasn't a negative for the EPP to say, oh, that was terrible and, et cetera.
Exactly.
They didn't do anything about it, sure, but they were like moving forward with how to make it better. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, we encourage you to highlight the things that maybe didn't work too and why. And then that's a great 5.4 issue. Like, this is what we looked at data. This is what it said to us. This is what
Yes.
we're going to do moving forward. So it's okay that it's not always roses, that sometimes it's thorns, and that's okay.
That's right. Thank you, Elena.
Thanks for bringing that up, Sharon. I really agree with all of that. And then, that flowing down to our teacher candidates too, because that's the thing that they struggle with the most as well, is taking the fear out of data. And, well, data's just a bad thing and it's a standardized test and that's all bad, type of stuff when it's like, well, or there's good things that you can do, you can use, and, they struggle with that as well. So
Right.
if we could infuse that at all levels, that would be wonderful.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll start modeling it at our level and then yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the maybe again the exciting part for me is that it was very difficult for the students to see anyone model at TPA because it's not what is it? What I can't think of the word on a Friday. You just can't go in and just like this is my ed TPA instruction because it's so you don't know who's scoring, you don't know I mean it's so fluid. But for the juniors now that we know will be using team full time, there we are actually having those courageous conversations with faculty to say, hey, now we really do need to be intentional about how we're constructing field study. What are they observing? And then for our students and our candidates to come back and say, I'm looking at this rubric and I'm not necessarily sure, and this was because Metro, let me make sure Metro National's not on here. We've had this conversation, but they were saying, I'm not necessarily sure that I'm seeing a teacher that's doing what they're supposed to be doing with regards to the rubric. So we internally are having different conversations in terms of even how we're doing clinical placements and having that conversation about mentorship, which is the sidebar to the state team, because I'm excited to see the mentor module because some of our mentors are better observers. Like you are a good test group to observe. You are not the best group to maybe serve as a mentor teacher for our candidate because your school may not be a culture for mentorship or your team, you're departmentalized. So you've got it. Your partner teacher may not have it. But for the students to say like, hey, here is the rubric. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking and I'm saying, yeah, I'm not seeing where she's expecting, learner engagement. Then it's just like, now that's the TPA moment that I really wanted to get so that they're having conversations and then and then again, it's that classroom to campus transition that I know that we all are all value when everyone is saying this is what we're seeing, or even for administrators, which we've had this year, to say, I'm not necessarily sure that I made a good decision pairing your candidate with this particular teacher. So we're going to go ahead and make a switch for residency two, or we're going to take this person offline because they're not a best representation of what your candidate needs to see and really what we want to see in ourselves because they themselves recognize that for the state, they need to evaluate differently because the students are like, is that a 3 moment? Because I'm feeling like it's a 2 and a possible. Like they're playing spades with like they're like, I don't know. So I love that, but I think that's where I see the greatest opportunity. And I get what EdTPA was designed to do, but I was always an advocate that that's something for a certified educator maybe to demonstrate because it's their classroom and they should be talking about their growth versus a teacher candidate that's still trying to figure out life.
I would like it noted for the record that we're not complaining about policy right now. We're actually like saying we really like this change in policy. And seriously, we're talking about all the great things that our prep programs are able to do now because of this change in policy. I really do think I like to think that was the intent of the policy change, was to open up this time for us to really focus on what's really important in the day one readiness aspects and the partnership with districts and how districts feel that EdTPA was not meeting their needs and maybe we should focus our efforts on literacy and like all the other things. So anyway, I will bring that up because we spent a lot of time complaining about policy. So we're like, yay, new policy this time. It's a little bit different.
That's a great
Um,
point. Definitely.
But when you're thinking about in when you're in the accreditation space, what I've learned through my fall process and being initiated by fire with Kate was that there has to be a coherent understanding about how what you're doing and how you're collecting data connects to the overall supports of your program and your candidate. And there was just that roadblock in terms of when you're looking at EdTPA data, what really does that mean in terms of could you identify in this particular class and then or was it this particular mentor teacher and even district partners were like, I don't really know what that 42 means because they passed, but I wouldn't hire them. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's informative because what do you do with that? And so the fact, again, that everyone can say, like, oh, well, on the team rubric, we all know what this three means. I think it helps to reaffirm what CAPE is trying to acquire from how you're working with district partners, how you're working with your focus group, how you're aligning your curriculum, making those standards and doing all those matrix. It brings it all together where I think people can come to the table and feel like they can collectively engage pre-admissions, admissions, even job embedded to say this is what we're looking for when we are recommending a candidate and standing by them. And I think that was just, where I'm happy about policy and I'm happy that it gives my faculty now the ammunition to have a conversation where we all feel like we're talking the same language versus 15 different iterations of what we think that CAPE wants to hear when CAPE really wants to hear, how do you know that your program is serving your stakeholders? And that was just that one little piece that we were just like, I don't know. Like we're good. Everything else makes sense, but this part we don't know. But yeah.
And one thing that several of us have skirted around in this conversation, so I'll just go ahead and throw it out there, but is the real uniqueness of Tennessee in that ed prep providers recommend candidates for licensure. Like that is, we do that. That's not TDOE, that's not a licensing entity, it's not state board. We're the ones that decide if a candidate should be recommended for licensure or not. And a lot of times we're recommending folks or a lot of times I don't think we understand that we have that power. We're saying, well, I didn't think they were ready, but the district really wanted to hire them into this, or I wasn't sure about their content preparation, or I wasn't sure, we do have the ability to, again, not abide by that state minimum. Just because they've met the state minimum does not mean we have to recommend them for licensure. They have to meet our program expectations. And so, sometimes I think we lose sight of that. And again, current context being what it is and teaching jobs getting harder to come by again, we may want to double down on quality at some point. Just so, not all states are like that. There's a lot of states where, a central entity in the state issues licensure and it's not based on preparation. So that's just something that we have going for us here too. To try to end a Friday on a good note. We like policy and we like licensure. Yay. All right, you guys, we're at the end of our time. I put our shared Google Drive folder that we've been keeping up with for a few years in the chat, and that has our running agenda that we've been keeping up with for a few years in the chat. I'm gonna think about what you said, Cindy. How can we best like share what we're doing, right? Like obviously there's fall tacti and we can all submit for presentations, but maybe we could do something else or better or different or something that we could all see. Because if you guys all submit for fall tacti, I'm going to be able to see one of those presentations and not all of them. So, anyway, we do need to better share what we're doing.
Mm.
So
Well,
let's think about
that
that
could
and continue to
definitely go
brainstorm.
into the theme of the fall, Amelia. Even though
Okay.
I won't be present there, but I can make that suggestion to just kind of circle around and go back to that because these are best practices for us. We hear about what's best practices for the students all the time, but what about for us? So I think
Yep.
that would be a great theme to kind of center around, sharing ideas, like Cindy said, what works, what didn't work for you, what works best for you. That'd be a great thing to do.
Maybe a specific call for what are you doing? Okay, no more ed TPA. So what are you doing? And I know that it's probably going to be presentations that are works in progress, but maybe open the space up for it to be that it's okay, that it's
Mhm.
not some fully deployed research study, but
Yeah,
where are you all at and what are you doing?
exactly. I'm
Something,
taking notes.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
can do
And
a
maybe
parent
not
share, right?
everything's a 60-minute session. Maybe it's a,
Yeah,
Yep,
like
round
15
tables
minute
or
quick
yep.
bites. Let's go
yeah.
through and learn from
Mhm.
each other type of a thing.
Kind of
All
like a
right. Well,
round table type of a thing.
Do a
yeah.
parent share, right? So you
Yeah.
Yeah,
can
yeah,
figure out ways to connect, right, with rubrics or whatever you want to talk about.
exactly.
All
And I
right.
will
Well,
say that
Sharon's going to
somebody
make it happen,
make it
even though
happen,
she's not
Sharon.
president anymore.
We'll do it. We'll get there.
I did have a question in the chat that came to me that asked about being a CAPE reviewer, since you mentioned that. So in the next month or so, there'll be a call that goes out through the weekly news update. It'll be on the website as well, that will ask for volunteers. And so you can sign up at that point and then go through training. And training's always done in the summer for us. And so we can work with you on that. Or if the state is offering another training, we will pair up with them. So if summer doesn't work for you and the state is interested in another training situation where it could be a joint venture, we're happy to have a conversation about that too. But it usually comes out at the end of March, usually, and we start end of May, beginning of June, and it goes over the summer, and it's all virtual, it's free. And then there's one kind of Zoom call like this that's live at the end. That's more of a mock formative meeting. And then there's a final exam, obviously, that just to practice what you've done. But that's all done in the summer. So
And you
whoever asked
do a
that, that's
great job of letting them observe
Mm-hmm.
yep. So
before they
once you
become.
pass training, we have and we call it observer, but really it's an apprenticeship kind of thing. So it's low stakes. So you're not as stressed and you're on a team, but you're kind of observing what's happening and you're able to participate in writing a little bit, but again, low stakes before you actually become a full reviewer. So you do that observation as your first review. And then your next review, you're kind of a full-fledged reviewer ready to go and write on your own for the standards. So we do have that built into the process as well.
Good.
Awesome. Thanks for those updates. And yeah, everyone have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia.
Thanks, Amelia.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Melina.
Melina.
Thanks, Melina.